everybody. Mike Sepley, Heritage Financial Advisory. Welcome to Heritage Insider Weekly for Friday, August 30th, 2024, the Labor Day edition. Back to update you on the markets and the economy. Very quiet week this week on Wall Street. A lot of people probably on vacation, low trading volumes, not a ton in the way of economic news, but we did have a couple things that we want to cover here today as they relate to the market. First, going in reverse this morning, you see the headline below. We had our PCE, Personal Consumption Expenditure Index, the Fed's, as you see, favorite inflation indicator, increased 0.2% in July, right in line with the expectations. Not much of a reaction, really, if any, from the market on that. Going back to Wednesday was the larger event of the week, and that was NVIDIA's earnings, right? The most popular stock in the market right now. Everybody wanted to see, will their earnings justify the hype? Can they continue to show this exponential growth? At what point will that slow? And on and on and on. And you see the headline, NVIDIA shares fall despite earnings beating estimates. The numbers were phenomenal. There's really no other way to say it. From a revenue perspective, earnings, the guidance looking forward was exceptional. The growth, I think it was 122% revenue growth year over year, and projecting with their new product launch later this fall, which is the Blackwell chip, that the revenue growth can continue at that high rate. So, this I believe is just a great example of, buy the rumor, sell the news, and expectations. If they're all on one side of the market tends to do other things just to throw people off. NVIDIA was down 5% or so yesterday. It was really nothing dramatic. The shares are up 150% this year. So really a muted reaction, if you will. But again, right, people, for the first time in my career, we were seeing things like people were having watch parties for the earnings report, and every network was live streaming the release. So usually if there's too much anticipation into an event, the market will like to kind of pull the rug out from under folks, if you will. So, obviously we're long-term investors, not concerned with day-to-day movements, but just interesting to see. So, but yes, the AI, we think the hype is well placed. We think it's validated by numbers like these. And it's not just NVIDIA. There's a lot of other participants in this trend. So I think it's very important to watch as these companies report and to continue to use that as a litmus test for, the practical uses and how much these things can increase efficiencies for S&P and NASDAQ companies, and therefore higher profits, higher stock prices. So let's take a look at the market, and we're getting a really nice reaction off of a very strong rally. So if you recall what I mentioned last week, when you have a V-shaped recovery like this, the first and most important thing that you don't want to see is the market immediately surrendering that gain, right? Just falling right back over, going back down, showing that there was really more of a dead cat bounce, if you will, than an actual sustained move. So we got the opposite of that. We got a really nice, tight consolidation, if you will, which, for lack of a better word, means markets have gone nowhere for the last week, and that's okay, right? We talked about how last week of the summer, low trading volumes, on and on. So there's not a lot in the way of catalysts, and NVIDIA, actually, I would argue, being down 5%, 6% yesterday, right? If you would have really spun out or conjured up that scenario ahead of time, and I told you NVIDIA is going to be down 6% on earnings, most people would have extrapolated that it would have been a really bad day for the market, and it was not. Markets were mostly flat yesterday. Actually had gains most of the day into the afternoon. So when you consider that, right, all we heard for the last year was that only a few stocks were driving market performance, and yet here's a day where the biggest stock in the market decides to have an off day, and markets were able to continue the business of going higher without them. So I think that's a good sign. That's a good tell that the rally is broadening. That's very important, and obviously that's something that bears watching as we get past the Labor Day holiday and into September. So now a lot of people think about September as having really difficult seasonal headwinds, and that's not entirely false, but it's usually the back half of September. So we do have some time here before the big anticipated Fed meeting, which I believe is on the 16th, I think the 16th. Yep. And then, of course, we'll have some other data releases along the way. But right now, you have a market that's essentially consolidating just below all-time highs. You couldn't draw it up from a better technical perspective. This is textbook bullish behavior. Again, markets like to deceive. So you look at this, the last couple days, we've had a couple shakeouts and a couple false breakouts or head fakes, if you will. So markets like to create a little bit of anxiety or unease before a move. But I think if you look at other periods of time, and even right here, and I'll just highlight it, you look at what last time the market kind of just went sideways a little bit, very similar to how it's doing right now. What came out of that was a pretty powerful move. That one ultimately wasn't sustained. That took us into our next correction, but that did bring us to previously the new all-time high. So we like to see something similar here. And as we've said many times before, we think the path is higher into year end. So volatile it will be, but higher into year end. And there's a lot of stocks that are acting well underneath the hood of the market that would suggest that that's going to come to fruition. So we remain ready to shift and pivot as we need. We're always flexible, never locked into one mentality. That's why we come back each and every week to update you on what we're seeing, what we're thinking, and how we're going to respond to it. So with that said, if you have any questions, of course, reach out to us. We're always here to talk to you about anything that matters with your money. We hope you have a great Labor Day weekend. Next week, no markets on Monday. Be a shortened week, 4-day trading week. We'll be back with you next Friday to bring you up to speed on all the action. Have a great day, and we'll see you back next week.